My mother-in-law kicked me out of her house because she disapproved of my decision to give birth at my parents' home. She forced me out while I was still in my pajamas, not even allowing me to put on shoes. With only my phone in hand, I quickly called my mom, who was nearby. I waited for her at a local diner. When my mom and sister found out what happened, they were furious and took swift action that would soon create significant problems for my mother-in-law and my husband. My name is Emma, and I'm 29 years old. I married Jerry, who is 31, a year ago. His father owns a large company, and Jerry is being groomed to take over as the next CEO. He's currently gaining experience at one of their smaller branches. I met Jerry at work, but I wasn't aware of his family's business empire until just before our wedding. The fact that he was in line to become the CEO took me completely by surprise. His confidence and likability made everything seem to fall into place, and suddenly, I found myself as the wife of a future CEO. After our marriage, Jerry moved to the main company's office while I continued with my job. My father-in-law was supportive, telling me, "I've heard you're a young leader at your workplace. Keep up the good work." However, my mother-in-law had a different view. She questioned why a wife would prioritize her career over home responsibilities and was strongly opposed to me working. Initially, I thought living separately from Jerry's parents would prevent conflicts, but I was wrong. They expressed a desire for us to live together, and that's when our troubles began. My father-in-law suggested that it would be beneficial to have someone around to manage things, given his busy schedule, and Jerry agreed. I was concerned about leaving my job and moving, but Jerry said, "Mom and I have always lived here. Moving now just wouldn't work for me." Feeling cornered, I reluctantly agreed to the arrangement. Once we all lived under one roof, the challenges began. My mother-in-law, already critical of my job, started making my daily life difficult. She insisted that I quit my job and take on all the household chores despite my full-time employment. Any small imperfection in my cleaning, whether a speck of dust or a stray hair, would prompt her to demand that I redo it. At first, I tried to use her criticism constructively, but her scrutiny escalated to inspecting rarely cleaned spots like behind the TV or between dressers. Eventually, I decided I had to stand up for myself. "I can't clean these areas every day," I said firmly. "I work just like Jerry. I'll do a thorough clean on weekends, so there's no need to redo everything today." My mother-in-law was enraged by my response. "How dare you talk back to me like that?" she shouted. In her anger, she called Jerry and falsely accused me of yelling at her, twisting my suggestions into a confrontation and adding tears for effect. I hoped Jerry would understand and support me, thinking he might say something like, "Mom, Emma is working too. Maybe you could be a bit more understanding." Instead, I was met with disappointment. "Why did you upset Mom like that? She was only trying to help," Jerry said, siding with her. This response underscored the stark difference in expectations and support within our family. "Why are you getting upset?" Jerry reprimanded me, ultimately aligning himself with his mother. It was then that I realized the only person I might rely on in that household was my father-in-law. However, his frequent absences due to work left me to navigate the tension on my own. I soon learned that challenging my mother-in-law only led to more disputes and left me feeling deflated, as she would invariably complain to Jerry, who offered no support. To avoid further conflict, I adopted a quieter demeanor, believing it was the only way to maintain some semblance of peace. This strategy carried me through the year until I began experiencing health issues, prompting a visit to the doctor. The diagnosis wasn't just an illness. I was pregnant, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension about the family's reaction. I decided to share the news with Jerry first. "You know how I've been feeling unwell lately." "Well, I went to the doctor, and guess what? I'm pregnant," I said. "That's great. So, I'm going to be a dad, huh? I can't wait. Do we know the gender yet?" Jerry responded excitedly. "Not yet. Does it matter to you?" I asked, sensing his underlying expectations. "Of course it does. It has to be a boy," he declared. Since Jerry was an only child, I got the impression that having a son to continue the family business was important to him. "What if it's a girl?" I wondered aloud, concerned about how this might impact our family dynamics. "Don't worry. I'm sure it's a boy," he reassured me, though I remained unconvinced. We decided to wait until we could confirm the baby's gender before telling his parents. When we learned we were having a girl, I was thrilled and uninterested in perpetuating any gender bias. Jerry's reaction, however, was less enthusiastic. "A girl? Are you sure? Get it checked again, he said, disappointment clear in his voice. His reaction made me anxious about how his mother would respond. Despite his initial disappointment, we knew we couldn't keep the pregnancy a secret from the in-laws any longer. I gently nudged Jerry to share the news. Well, I'm pregnant, he told them. My father-in-law's face lit up with joy. That's wonderful, Emma. We're finally going to have our first grandchild, he exclaimed with genuine happiness. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was immediate and pointed. So, what's the gender? She inquired with a hint of hesitation. I replied, it's a girl. A girl? I hope she's as lovely as you, Emma, my father-in-law said warmly, clearly not concerned about the gender. But my mother-in-law's disappointment was unmistakable. A girl, not a boy. It has to be a boy to make sense for Jerry, she muttered under her breath. I was taken aback by her reaction. Before the tension could escalate, my father-in-law intervened. Honey, why would you say that? Whether it's a boy or a girl, they're still our grandchild. Can't you just be happy? He chided her gently. She seemed subdued after his reprimand, but I knew her mood wouldn't last. True to form, as soon as my father-in-law left for work the next day, my mother-in-law confronted me. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off on the housework. You're not planning to quit your job, are you? If not, keep up with your chores. Pregnancy isn't an illness, you know. Hearing these words from someone who had been through pregnancy herself was jarring. It made me seriously question whether staying here was the right choice for my child. My family's home is about a 4-hour train ride away. Since my dad passed away early, my mom and older sister have been living there together. Perhaps if I shared everything with them, they might welcome me to stay. I began to feel that giving birth at my in-laws' place might not be the safest or most supportive option. I remembered that my family's home could offer a better, more caring environment. I decided to call my mom immediately. Mom, it's Emma. What's up? She asked, surprised by the call. I'm pregnant, and I was thinking, could I come home to give birth? I asked. Congratulations. You should have told us sooner. Of course, you can come home for the delivery. But have you talked this over with your in-laws yet? Not yet, I admitted. Make sure you discuss it properly with them. If they agree, then I see no issue at all, Mom advised, emphasizing the importance of clear communication for the well-being of my baby. Encouraged by my mom's support, I decided to discuss the plan with Jerry. I'm thinking of going home for the birth, I mentioned casually. Oh, going home for the birth? I guess that's fine, Jerry responded nonchalantly. My mom's here, so things should be okay around the house. His quick agreement surprised me, but anticipating potential resistance from my mother-in-law, I decided to speak with my father-in-law as well. After some thought, I approached him. I think it might be best for everyone if I went home for the delivery. Would that be all right? He seemed initially surprised but then reassured me. If that's what you want, Emma, then it's probably the best decision. I won't oppose it. Could you perhaps speak to your wife on my behalf? He asked. I'll tell her, he promised, seeming supportive of my decision. With his backing, I thought I had secured permission to go home for the delivery without issues. However, on the morning I was scheduled to leave, I woke up to find my packed luggage missing. My heart sank as both my husband and father-in-law had already left for work, leaving me no choice but to confront my mother-in-law. Do you know where my luggage is? I asked hesitantly. Oh, that luggage? I got rid of it, she snapped. I don't need a daughter-in-law who causes so much trouble. Don't ever come back, she shouted aggressively. Stunned by her harsh dismissal, I realized that returning to my family was not just a preference but a necessity for my peace and safety. As she pushed me out the front door, I barely had time to react. I hadn't even put on my shoes, clad only in my pajamas and holding just my smartphone. I heard the front door lock behind me with a definitive click, a clear signal that my mother-in-law wanted me gone, and she meant it. The thought hit me hard. If I lingered, that door might never open for me again. With this realization, I began to walk away. The peak of summer made the barefoot journey outside nearly unbearable. Seeking some relief, I found refuge in a nearby diner, using the only possession I had, my phone, to reach out for help. I called my mom, who was incensed by the situation, and promised to arrive within the hour. Fortunately, she wasn't far away. I spent that anxious hour in the diner, nervously waiting for her. When she arrived, she didn't hesitate. She drove me straight back to our family home, where my sister was already waiting. I shared everything, the harsh actions of my mother-in-law, and the apparent indifference of my husband. My mom and sister exchanged quiet words, their murmurs leaving me anxious about their discussion. The next morning, being back at my family home felt like a breath of fresh air. As I went to fetch the newspaper, I opened the door to an unexpected sight. My mother-in-law and husband were kneeling outside. "Emma, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. Please don't sever ties with my husband's company," my mother-in-law pleaded. "Emma, I'm sorry too. Please can we continue doing business with my dad's company?" my husband added, his voice filled with regret. Confused, I had no idea what they were talking about. Suddenly, my mom and sister appeared from behind. "What on earth are you two doing? Causing a scene this early?" my mom asked sternly, her voice cutting through the morning air. "What does resuming business mean?" she probed, seeking clarity on their sudden change of heart. To avoid further disturbance, my mom invited them inside. The atmosphere was tense, with unspoken questions hanging in the air as we all stepped back into the house. Once everyone was seated, my husband began to plead his case. "Would you please consider doing business again with my dad's company?" he asked my mom and sister, who managed the company my late father had left behind. They listened intently, curiosity evident in their expressions. I turned to my mom. "What does it mean that they're doing business with my father-in-law's company?" "Yes, they work with one of their subsidiary companies," my mom explained. "It's a major player within their group, second only to the main office, and their top client is your mom's company." My husband added, looking at me, "This was news to me and apparently to you as well." I chuckled. "That's news to me too," I said, reflecting on what I remembered. Come to think of it, I recall my parents-in-law mentioning they've always been indebted to each other since they first met. The warmth of nostalgia quickly cooled when my mom interjected with firm resolve. "I can't continue doing business with a family that would send my daughter out like that, with just her phone," I declared firmly. "I'm ending our business dealings." My mother-in-law, visibly shaken by my mom's declaration, pleaded desperately, "Please, I beg you, I'll do anything. Could you reconsider stopping the dealings with my husband's company?" At that moment, my sister, with a smirk, chimed in, "You said you'd do anything, right? So you'll agree to Emma's divorce and, of course, pay alimony and child support, won't you?" Her words echoed painfully in my mind. Just the day before, my husband's response to my concerns had been dismissive. "It's what you deserve," he had said coldly. That callous remark only solidified my decision. Silently, I found myself in agreement with my mom's stance. Any remaining affection for my husband had evaporated. If my sister hadn't made such a compelling point, I would have brought up divorce myself. Thanks to her well-timed comment, the conversation's dynamics shifted decisively in our favor. Reluctantly, my mother-in-law asked, "Even if it means agreeing to a divorce, will you resume business with my husband's company?" With a knowing smirk, my mom pulled out her phone and made a call. "It seems this lady here agrees to my daughter's divorce," she said clearly into the phone. From the speaker came my father-in-law's voice. "Got it. Hey Maria, I'm divorcing you, and Jerry, you're fired." His drastic conditions for resuming business were clear. My mom continued firmly, "I cannot forgive the two of you for how you treated Emma. You both deserve to be punished." This unexpected turn of events led to my mother-in-law losing her husband and my husband losing his job, income, and family support. The fallout continued with a bitter divorce, expertly handled by a top-notch lawyer from my father-in-law's side. During the proceedings, assets were divided, and my mother-in-law ended up paying a significant sum in compensation to my husband and me. I, too, proceeded with the divorce. Living with a husband so heavily influenced by his mother was no longer an option for me. I received compensation for the emotional pain inflicted by my mother-in-law and husband, as well as child support for our unborn child. The financial strain on them was so severe that they had to dip into their savings and eventually take on debt. Under the powerful influence of my father-in-law and mom, my now ex-husband struggled to secure a new job in his previous field and ultimately had to switch careers, moving into customer service. This marked a significant, perhaps humbling, change in his professional life, highlighting the profound consequences of our family turmoil. However, my ex-husband underestimated his new role in customer service and soon faced numerous complaints, leading to a swift termination. He now lives with his mother, barely scraping by with daily wage jobs. Once accustomed to a lavish lifestyle, They now reside in a small one-bedroom apartment. Their relationship soured and marked by frequent arguments. I sometimes wonder if there's any hope or joy left in their lives. Meanwhile, I safely gave birth at home to a healthy baby girl surrounded by the support of my mom and sister. As things settle down, I'm planning to join my mom's company, looking forward to a new chapter in my professional life. I did inform my ex-husband about our daughter's birth, but he showed little interest. All I expect from him is to fulfill his child support obligations. I have no intention of letting him be a part of our daughter's life. My focus is on moving forward and living a fulfilling life with my daughter, supported by the love and strength of my family.
This is a house for family only, so you're no longer needed here. My mother-in-law looked at me with a smug expression. I thought, what in the world is she talking about? I was stunned by her words. She seemed to enjoy my shocked expression, smiling smugly. Satisfied, she skipped away like she'd won. Mom, it's okay. Don't worry. I'll never let anyone treat you like an outsider. My daughter wrapped her arm around my back. Hearing her say that, we both exchanged a little smile. My name is Melinda. I'm in my 40s, working full-time. I live with my husband Ken and my daughter Lisa. Lisa isn't biologically related to my husband. Ken and I remarried about 10 years ago. Back then I was in my 30s, and Lisa was in middle school. We used to live together with my previous husband. One day, when I wasn't feeling well, I went to the hospital. That's when he was diagnosed with terminal illness. After a discussion, we decided on home care, and I looked after him. But suddenly he felt unconscious and had to be taken to the hospital. They tried everything, but there was nothing they could do. Both Lisa and I were in a daze during the funeral. A week after the funeral, I finally felt able to think again. My parents took care of the funeral arrangements and paperwork. We received insurance and benefits from the government, which added up to quite a bit. But all I wanted was for him to still be with us. I wished the three of us could have stayed together. Months passed, and slowly I started moving forward. Several years later, I was over 40, and Lisa had graduated from college and started working in an office. She was still living with me and didn't seem to have a boyfriend. One evening after dinner, we were watching TV together on the couch. Mom, I lost my dad when I was in middle school, but thanks to you, I was able to graduate college and find a job. I'm really grateful for everything you did. Oh, what's gotten into you all of a sudden? It almost sounds like you're saying goodbye. I never heard her express gratitude like that before. It was so unexpected that I wondered if something was wrong. It's not a goodbye, so don't worry. But maybe now you should start thinking about your own happiness. I froze for a moment at her words. My happiness? My happiness is seeing you happy. That's not what I meant. It's time for you to start dating again, Mom. Some of my friends' moms are even on dating sites. Maybe she was right. I wondered if I'd held on to the role of caretaker for too long. Her words inspired me to consider dating again. Since my husband's passing, I hadn't gotten close to any men. Lisa was encouraging me, and soon I'd be 50, so maybe it was time to try. It felt a little embarrassing to do it alone, though. Afraid of being scammed, I registered with a reputable marriage agency. I figured as a single mom nearing 50, my chances were low. But not long after registering, the agency called with a match that met my criteria. Nervously, I went to the meeting place and saw a kind-looking man around my age. This man would later become my current husband. When I introduced myself, he responded shyly, clearly, even more nervous than I was. Seeing him so tense put me a bit more at ease. After a year of dating, he proposed, and I happily accepted. He accepted my situation as a single mom wholeheartedly. When I told Lisa, she was overjoyed. Finally, Mom, I thought you'd get married sooner. I'm so happy for you. Shortly after, we got married and officially became a family. Because of our age, and since this was my second marriage, we kept things simple with just wedding photos. Lisa initially disagreed, but I respected her feelings. Our new home felt warm and happy, with smiles everywhere. I was glad I'd listened to my daughter and remarried. One day, my husband made a suggestion.
Hey, Melinda, we're both nearly 50. How about we build a home together?
His words surprised me. Why do you want to build a house?
We're halfway through our lives, and we never know what might happen. I want to leave something lasting behind.
I could understand his reasoning. We couldn't have children together, so Lisa was our only child. Leaving her cash would be one way, but I'd always dreamed of having my own home. You're right. Let's work together to pay off the mortgage. We told Lisa and she happily agreed to the plan. We informed Amy as well, but she immediately said she wouldn't provide any support. She always disliked me, thinking I stole her son. Ken told me not to worry about her. When Ken and I had a free day, we met with a contractor. Ken wanted a custom-built house, so we decided to take our time designing it. As we finalized the layout, we started having fun talking about each person's space. This room will be mine. It's a great spot. I love mine too. It has the best sunlight.
My office will be next to Lisa's room, so it'll get sunlight too.
As we laughed and planned, the doorbell rang. I didn't expect any visitors, and neither did Ken or Lisa.
I'll get it. Maybe it's a delivery?
Ken went to the door while Lisa and I resumed discussing the house. But 5 minutes passed and Ken hadn't returned. Just as I wondered if he'd met someone he knew, I heard his voice yelling from the entryway. I quickly told Lisa to stay put and went to see what was happening. When I reached the door, I saw Ken arguing with a woman, his mother.
Mom, I told you to let me come visit you if you need anything.
I'm your mother. I don't need permission to visit my son's house. Understanding why she was there, I stepped forward to back up Ken. Hello, Mom. It's been a while. What can we help you with? I'm not here for you or your daughter. I only need to talk to Ken. She glared at me dismissively, but I was part of this family and I contributed to this household. I suggested to Ken that we let her in to discuss matters in the living room. Reluctantly, Ken agreed. When we entered, Lisa was seated at the table looking worried. As soon as she saw Amy, Lisa's face soured. Hello, Grandma. It's been a while. Don't call me Grandma. My only grandchild is my daughter's child. Lisa didn't seem bothered, just resigned to hearing this again. Ken told his mother off for her behavior, but she ignored him. I came here to discuss your new house, Ken. She started examining the house plans spread on the table. I had a bad feeling about this. So, Mom, what did you want to discuss? I don't need to talk to you. I'm here to speak with Ken. Ken, since you have extra rooms, your father and I will be moving in. I felt my bad premonition coming true. She thought she could move in with us despite offering no support.
You're mistaken. This house is for me, Melinda, and Lisa.
Ken reminded her that she and his father already had a house they'd built together. That house is old. This one is much nicer, and I'd rather live here. She continued to demand things, even changing the floor plan to suit her. Seeing her entitlement, I encouraged Lisa to go to her room and gave Ken a look, signaling I'd had enough.
Mom, the floor plan isn't finalized, so there's no point in discussing it now. Please, just go home.
Ken pushed her out as she continued to argue. Finally, we managed to get her out of the house. Once we'd closed the door, Ken let out a deep sigh.
I'm so sorry, Melinda. A few days ago, my mom asked about the house's progress, and I told her we were still working on the floor plan. I didn't think she'd actually show up here like this.
Don't worry, Ken. It's not your fault. But yeah, this might get tough for a while. We were both at a loss on how to handle the situation. At that point, we were only at the floor planning stage. We still had to finalize the house's exterior and interior design. I had a feeling she'd keep showing up as construction progressed. I wondered if there was any way to stop her from interfering. But no clear solution came to mind, and the planning phase continued. When we eventually finalized the layout, the next meeting was scheduled to discuss interiors. As Ken and I discussed the excitement of completing the house, I noticed a shadowy figure standing by our front door. To my shock, it was Amy. She had come on the day of the meeting. Perfect timing.
Oh, Mom.
I've been waiting out here for an hour. Where were you two? She had apparently been standing outside all that time, just waiting.
If you'd known we were out, you could have gone home, right?
I held back from saying it aloud, swallowing my words.
Mom, why are you here again? I've told you, we can't allow you to live with us.
I'm sorry, but we're in a hurry today, and we need to get going. Could we discuss this some other time? I tried politely pushing her to leave, but I could see that she wasn't budging easily. She began muttering complaints about the house's atmosphere and layout as I firmly persuaded her to go home. Finally, we managed to get her to leave, but I knew we couldn't keep giving vague excuses forever. That night, the three of us, Ken, Lisa, and I, gathered to talk. Of course, we all agreed that we didn't want to live with Amy, but finding a concrete solution wasn't easy.
I'm willing to cut ties if we have to.
But Ken's father was kind, and we didn't want to sever the relationship entirely. I suggested that cutting ties would be a last resort, and we continued brainstorming other options. Building the house would take at least a year, so I doubted we could keep lying to her about the address for that long. Unable to settle on a solution, we ended the discussion without resolution. A few days later, during dinner, Lisa suddenly spoke up. "Oh, Mom, Dad, there's someone I'd like you to meet." Both Ken and I were surprised. "I've been thinking about something, and I think it might work." She went on to explain her idea, a plan to deal with Amy. It was a grand, elaborate idea, and though I initially disagreed, she was insistent. Eventually, after some thought, Ken and I decided to trust Lisa and go along with her plan. The next day, we began Operation Mother-in-Law. However, despite our efforts, Amy started showing up more frequently. With our work schedules following a standard holiday calendar, she seemed to time her visits for our days off. We tried ignoring her a few times, but then she'd call us non-stop. Sometimes she even yelled outside, disturbing the neighbors. I once received a complaint from a neighbor about the noise, so reluctantly we began letting her inside whenever she visited. On one such visit, I reached out to Ken's father for help. He'd look apologetic and quietly take her home each time, and it hurt to see him caught in the middle. I eventually stopped asking for his help, not wanting to burden him. When Amy would enter the house, she'd check on the construction plans. If her preferences weren't considered, she'd throw a fit, directing her anger solely at me. For Ken, her precious son, she reserved her sweetest tones. This became a routine. Each time she'd come over, it was the same. Eventually, we completed the new house's layout, and I felt a wave of relief. It had been a long road, but finally our home was nearly ready. Now there would be 4 of us living there, me, Ken, Lisa, and her fiancé, Ryan. Ryan was a kind, hard-working young man who had proposed that we all live together. Since his parents had passed away when he was young, he had been raised by his uncle. At first, I was hesitant to have a newlywed couple living with us, but after seeing how earnest Ryan was, we agreed. Our new house had separate entrances, so privacy wouldn't be an issue. Even though we were thrilled about the new home, Amy's visits added stress. I asked Lisa to stay over at Ryan's place on weekends to avoid the tension. He agreed gladly, and I felt reassured. Finally, the moving day arrived. We packed our things and prepared for the big transition. Lisa's initial plan had been to give Amy a fake address, directing her to an empty lot. The actual construction site would remain hidden, and we'd quietly move into the real house. But there was a risk she might visit the empty lot mid-construction, and Lisa had a backup plan for that. "Dad, just tell Grandma that her preferred layout has been followed. Say it's a surprise, and she can't visit until it's fully completed." I was skeptical, but Lisa was confident. And in the end, she was right. My mother-in-law never found out about the real location, and we moved in smoothly. After settling in, we were talking and laughing when I heard a voice behind me. Well, looks like you're all here, and the weather's perfect for moving day." I turned to see her standing there, a smug grin on her face.
Mom, we're glad you could make it, but what brings you here?
"Oh, I'm here to help you move, of course. You need all the help you can get." Ken firmly replied, defending me.
We've got everything packed, and Melinda's definitely not useless.
I was touched by his words. "Mom, don't you have any packing to do yourself?" She glared at me. "Who do you think you're talking to? Our move is tomorrow." But the truth was, her move wasn't going to happen. Ken and I had already spoken to his father about keeping their current home. We'd suggested splitting the move across 2 days to avoid chaos, and she had agreed, not suspecting a thing. Just then, she said something that made my heart skip a beat. "Oh, by the way, I went to see the new house. It's lovely. Can't wait to move in." How could she have seen it? We hadn't told her the real location.
Mom, you went to see the house?
"Of course. Since it's completed, I thought it was allowed now. I couldn't get inside, but the exterior is beautiful." Somehow, she'd found the fake site. I felt a surge of panic, wondering if she'd uncovered our plan. Then she turned to me with a gloating smile. "By the way, I heard you paid for the whole place. Thanks for that. After all, as my son's wife, your money belongs to the family. Normally I'd brush her off, but today her words felt like an added weight. But don't worry, this is a family home. You're no longer needed here. With a triumphant laugh, she turned and left. I stood there paralyzed. Mom, don't worry. I won't let anyone treat you like an outsider. But she's already figured out where we're moving. What should we do? Actually, there's something I haven't told you. She gave me a confident smile that I couldn't quite understand. You'll see, Mom. Just trust me. And with that, we began the final phase of our plan, hoping for the best as we moved into our new home. When we arrived, Lisa's fiancé Ryan was already waiting.
I submitted our marriage registration this morning. I'm officially your son-in-law now. Please look after me.
I remembered they had planned to marry on moving day. Congratulations, Ryan, Lisa. Feel free to call us Mom and Dad.
Thank you, Mom, Dad.
We celebrated the move with a family dinner and a peaceful night. The next morning, we woke to the sound of my phone ringing. Seeing Amy's name on the screen, I could already guess what she'd say. What have you done? My house is gone. What is the meaning of this? This was Lisa's plan. She'd told her grandmother the address of an old house on an empty lot. We'd built a fake structure on it, complete with exterior walls but no interior. Now that she'd discovered the truth, my heart felt lighter. Did you just find out? That was a little faster than expected. I was relieved, knowing she'd never bother us again. And with that, we ended the call, finally at peace in our true family home.